In our last tutorial, we were speaking of the data entry screen in contracts and the detail screen. So here we are on the detail screen. And now we're going to move on and talk about the royalty data screen and the points and special, etc. And we're going to talk more about the contract file, some of the details. Notice again that all the layouts in the contract file are these buttons here. Excuse me. And the data entry button here takes you back to data entry, detail. These buttons here, other than the data entry, will take you to other files. So you want to ignore those. So what we want to do now, we're going from detail and we want to go to royalty data. So we click this button and it takes us to this screen. You'll notice over here we have another screen in the background. Your screen should be stacked. As they open, they stack on top of each other. You don't want to drag the files all around your computer. That's not the way to use Songtracker. Songtracker is done by buttons to get to individual layouts and screens. You don't want to be confused by looking at all kinds of screens all over the place. You want to basically be looking at one layout at a time, one screen. Okay, so now we're in the royalty data screen here. Notice at the top it gives you information that you've already entered about this new contract that we just did. These are those basic fields that were in our portal. 100% of what Twyla's entitled to, 100% on the sync licenses, whatever she's entitled to. This was her print, 25 cents a copy, sheet music, folio, 50%. Performances, 100% of performances. These are all auto-entered. You don't have to enter this data. This is what she's entitled to, which is 100% of whatever the deal is. So we'll put other percentages elsewhere. I'll show you that. So even we have miscellaneous 1 and 2 in case in the future we need to set something up. Everything's been entered as 100% of what she's entitled to. I know that sounds like nebulous, like we don't really need that information, but everything is multiplied by 100%. That way, if someone needs to do a super customization of some weird scenario where there's 14 investors that have to get a percentage and blah, blah. We've heard questions over the years, and so to overcome that, we introduce these fields. So disregard them. I mean, they should just come in auto-entered, except for the print and the folio. Those you'll change. All right. Minimum royalty amount, the minimum royalty amount to require a statement. If, for example, they only have $1 worth of royalties accrued, you don't want to have to send a statement at the quarter. So if in your contract you stipulate we'll only send a royalty statement, or we may send a royalty statement, but we're only going to send royalties out in checks if you're due over $25. And maybe you can structure it so you only send out a statement if it's over $25. That way, if it's under, it cuts down a lot of paperwork for you. Okay, so advance percentage recoupable. Percentage of an advance we may recoup. So we can recoup 100%. Say we pay her $1,000 per song or $1,000 on the contract, and we want to recoup that amount. We can recoup it on all advances. So we get to recoup that amount first. All right. Advances for this contract. This is where you enter, down in here, this is where you enter advance payments. Let's say we're going to pay her $1,000. Quarterly is what we're normally we pay royalties on a quarterly basis. For example, we have audit rights in our contract. If you don't, leave it blank. Say 3 years past the statement. Number of days due after. This is the number of days in the contract stipulated when the royalty statement must arrive to her, to this person, whoever the contract is for. So let's say it says 45 or 90 days after we're required to get the contract to her. That way it's stipulated in our agreement. Let's go on and enter an advance payment. All we do is click this button. and it's creating an entry in the portal here. So what it's doing, it's already starting. It knows it's in advance, so it went to a different layout for points and advances. It's this layout that it went to, and we're going to say we sent her a check, so we'll call it check number 4567. Enter notes if you need to. You can type as long as you need to. Advance on Song I Love You, or whatever it's called. For example, it's a pending the statement hasn't come out yet, so it's still pending amount. Now, so we don't want the deposit amount, we want to click in here for the amount. So it kind of helps you through that. So it's $1,000. Hit our enter button, and it'll just create $1,000. Now we've sent that. Issue, this is no longer available, but it used to be able to, if you use both of our modules that were linked together in the old days, you could have the accounting done. We're not doing that anymore because so many people are using outside accounting packages like QuickBooks and stuff. Well, that's not available, so you can't really issue it. So that's just ignore that. You can click if it's been issued. You can put a manual checkbox in there. Now the recoup button, that'll be handled automatically after from the royalties file. As you send out money, it'll keep track of whether it's recouped or not. So you'll be able to recoup on advances. So let's say you have she has royalties coming in for $1,002. So on the royalty statement, you'll only owe her $2 because you've already paid her $1,000. So there'll be a place over in the royalty file where you can recoup that $1,000. It'll have a list of all your advances over there. Okay, so this is how you enter an advance. Preferred payment method, you can check that if you want. Or it could be sent right, ETF, electronic transfer. In that case, you'd want to put all the bank numbers in there. Just enter those. It's nice to keep track of that. Now, we're in this percentage points file. So in here, you can add as many notes as you need about what you're doing. And that'll scroll as needed. Now, right here, it tells you the total points contracted for this project. Now, projects are totally different than songwriter and publisher royalties. Those are artist royalties. But if you're doing a deal, sometimes you want to encompass everything in one deal. You could put the publishing, notice the publishing's already entered as 50%, and you could also enter the royalties for the artist royalty that she's entitled to for every album sold, etc., every single. So 25%, for example, if that was the amount, or 5%. Foreign royalties 15, or whatever the amount is you negotiated. Over here on this side, this allows you to do split publishing or no. It just tells you if it's split publishing, you want to enter this amount. If you're doing foreign co-publishing and they get a piece of that, maybe they only get 25% of foreign co-publishing. You can keep track of whether the foreign royalty basis is at the source or after fees, etc., receipts. A lot of times people are doing it at the source. Administration fee percentage. If there's a fee percentage that you deduct, say 5% for administration, you could put that fee in there and it helps calculate for you. It also keeps track of that amount. All right. All right, that takes care of the royalty data screen and the percentage points. So now we have we go back over here to the royalty data screen. You'll notice that there's total unrecouped advances still available, $1,000. Now, if we enter another advance, we could do that. It's pending. So we click in here. Let's say it's a $500 advance. Let's say it's issued, and when we make the check out, you can say it was issued. Now it's showing you there are $1,500 in advances. So when we go over here, actually we're already there. So when we go back over to royalty data, now it's incremented to 1,500. So it keeps a running tab of how many advances on each contract have been paid. That way you may have an artist an artist contract that's separate, and that's recoupable, and there's advances paid on that. You may want to separate that because you don't want royalties coming out of their publishing royalties from that advance. So if that's the case, then separate them and do two different contracts, one for artist, one for publishing, or one for author royalties, etc. Something we didn't talk about yet was this part of the screen. We entered in advance, but we didn't go into this. This portal here, you can keep track of different advances if you wish to do that kind of detail. You can go into these and enter any amounts you want to keep track of. This is not critical. It just lets you keep track of the different advances. But they're also in a portal. They'll appear. Now, this is important. Hold out domestic reserves. If this is something that you do from your contract, in other words, you can hold out foreign or domestic reserves are to be held before payment. It allows you to say your contract allows you to hold up to 2 quarters, 20%. So you're only paying them 80%. Our system will track that and pay that amount, and only pay 80%, and then it'll allow you to go back and pay reserves at a later date, and it will track those reserves for you. So if that's in your contract and you wish to track that, then you must enter this data here for this contract, or it will not, it'll just track 0 reserves. So if you need to do it, let's say 4 quarters for that. For foreign, it may just be on foreign, for example. This allows you, to apply reserves. The checkbox must be checked to actually deduct the reserves from domestic and our foreign royalties paid out. In other words, you could say that we're going to keep this much out, but if you don't click this button, Songtracker's not going to actually do it automatically and pull those out. So if you actually are going to enforce this part of the contract, then you must check this checkbox. This is for domestic. Do you wish to apply reserves against current royalties? If you enter a check mark in this box, the hold for reserve percentage will be deducted from any royalties paid out to this entity and contract number to be paid later. So if you click yes, it'll check it. This is another button you can actually enter. It says if this contractor company collects royalties on our behalf and pays us directly, they keep their share before sending us our portion, and there is no need to create royalty statements. Do not issue royalty statements. For example, if this is somebody you're keeping a contract in here but you don't actually pay them, this will prevent royalty statements from being made. So it will prevent you from issuing them. This is an automatic entry. It keeps track of what has been dollar amounts that are outstanding from a last statement. Maybe you didn't pay, it was $22, and your deal up here is to say, well, we don't pay money out unless it's over $25, for example. That's where that amount stays, and that will be updated. It's tracked in the royalty file, but it updates here, so it has a place to go and look how much you owe them. And that takes care of that. All right, moving on. Okay, so in the portal, right at the beginning when you enter it, the first thing you're clicking is this first field. This gives you 6 different choices. So you got author, publisher, and foreign sub-publisher. Those are the deals that you make in the publishing business. These bottom ones are the ones that are in the projects file based on artist royalties or producer royalties. And business agreement would be like royalties you owe a manager or somebody else, an arranger, etc. Might get points or amounts of money. So you must enter one of these based on the type of agreement it is. Now, you can include author and publisher together in one called author, for example, because it gives you room to put in the co-publishing amount over here, etc. But other than that, you should do a separate contract for each type of agreement, like a producer or artist. It's a good idea. Or you could probably include artist and producer together. But it's a good idea to break this up. You'll have to just decide which way you want to do it. We give you multiple fields in the file, so you'll be able to handle it. But I wanted to make sure you understood that producer, artist, and business agreement is artist deals and management, etc., not publishing or music publishing. These first 3 are for music publishing. Author, publisher, co-publisher, foreign sub-publisher that you might do a deal with, etc. Okay. All right, now we're going to move on to another layout in the contract file. Notice it's red. That tells us we're in the contract file. Also up here it says contract. Tells you the file we're in. We'll go to special. Special just gives you some extra fields. This field is optional. You could copy paste in here. Your entire final contract draft, for example, allows you to keep track of it, and that way you could go through and read the terms anytime. That's just an option. You may prefer to keep it in a file drawer, whatever you want, but at least you can keep it digitally here. Now, this is in case of death. So at some point in the future, years down the line, when Twyla passes, then you could enter her date of passing, any heirs that her royalties will go to. What is the relationship? It could be a son or daughter. Phone number. I'm just typing random here, but so that you have all this data on file in case of death. You may not find this out until after their death, but if it's something, if they're sick or if they're nearing an old age, you may want to track this data. So in that case, if and when that happens, you know how to take care of the royalties. But this allows you to track the information and who you would contact in case of death. That could be something you even put in your contract if you like. Now we're going to move on here. So again, this can be copy pasted or typed manually. We're going to click now to the checklist box. Each file gives you a checklist for the most part. Allows you to check these things once the contract's been sent. You've had discussions, received with revisions, the contract was modified, you sent draft number 2, you've talked on the phone, etc. You can keep track of all these different steps so you always know where you're at in a contract negotiation. If something you need to enter is not here, you can always click other and type it in the list. Okay. So to do that, you would just click here and add something else here. So these are also active. This is the activity log that's related to this contract. You can add information here as you want, and it links it by number to this person and contract number. So anything you send to Twyla Fabulous as far as an activity or information can appear in here based on what you do in the people file. It'll show up if it's related to a contract number. If it's not related to the contract number, it won't show up. But it gives you just look back at the activity log in the people file. It's done the same way. You can make additions here, or you can have them entered over in the people file. Here's a notarized field. Who notarized it? John Smith. Date of notary. You can type that in. Commission expired for that person. Put a date in if you want. Assignment sign. This is an important field too. Keep that no until you send assignment out with a contract for each song to make sure you get your assignments in. This would be helpful also in the catalog file. I believe we have that over there as well, but that's where you'd want to keep that information. But it's nice to know that assignments have been signed and sent back in to you so that you have them in your files. Okay. Royalty history is the next button we're going to, and the last one. This will show up once data has been entered from royalties. Now, this is a brand new contract and we haven't entered any data. Now, if I backtrack to a previous record, you'll see that Razor Hook here on this person has had statements, domestic and foreign, on amounts sent out. And royalties have been paid. So it allows you to track the latest. The latest will appear at the top, and then it'll scroll back through the years. All the royalties that have been sent, and here's a total right here. So that's very helpful as well. So that gives you an entire synopsis of the contract file. Again, to get back to the data entry screen, click here. You're always on the same record when you're clicking between these layouts. You're looking at Razor Hook because we changed it. Now, if we go back to Twyla Fabulous, it stays on that record as I click through the buttons. So once you're in a record and you've done a search or find, you can do for Command F, for example, and do a find for Twyla and hit enter, and it'll bring up Twyla's 2 contracts. Remember we did 2 staff deals? If you click this button and go to the long list, you'll see staff deal 1 and staff deal 2. You can go to either one. All right. So again, notice that the author number is the same, but the contract ID is different. They might both be staff writer deals, but they're different ID numbers. This has been updated. So to get to the record, click on it, and that'll take you right to the record we've been working on. You can always come in here and update. You can delete, edit. You can add more data as needed. As the years go on and you want to make notes about this, maybe she changes studios, etc. All right, very helpful file. Again, if you don't do all of the data, be sure to do the portal data in the people file. That's really critical, that you create a contract for each person who's entitled to receive money from you. If you decide you don't want to do a contract for the other writers that you're not responsible for, that's up to you. But anybody that you're responsible to pay, you have to have a contract for each song or for each deal, each contract that you sign with that person. And that's both for artists and for publishing and writing. So I hope that's helpful. And that's it. That takes care of the contract file. All right.